Welcome to the May 2017 OEM Australia Windows Server update. In this update, we'll be focusing on some of the integration capabilities that we started covering last week when we were talking about Windows 10 and Windows Server 2016 better together. But what we'll do now is focus more heavily on Windows 10 from the perspective of the Creators Update. And what I'll start doing is bringing in some of those technologies and enhancements that have been made with the Creators Update to try to put them into a reference that's easily understandable from the perspective of those of you who are more focused on the traditional on-prem deployment, but also give you a bit of an idea of what's happening when it comes to some of the new technologies when it comes to cloud deployments. So let's jump in first of all and take a look at the different editions and versions of Windows 10, and we'll do a comparison against the earlier editions of Windows as well. So first up, when we do take a look at the overall differences as we go from Home to Pro to Enterprise to E5. For today, I just really want to focus on the Home to Pro conversation. What I'm planning on doing next month is starting to drill into more detail around what you get when you start looking at the Enterprise E3 or Enterprise E5 elements, because that's where you start seeing some different changes, things that are very different to what we've seen in the past with earlier versions of Windows. So let's take a look now at Home versus Pro. So really, if we take a look at some of the capabilities we've got with Home versus Pro, you'll notice that with Pro, really it's around management, which is where a lot of the initial changes start kicking in. So the management, so you'll see here things like traditional domain join type of capabilities. We've got other capabilities though that have started to be rolled in. So things like support for Windows, Windows Hello for Business. We've got Azure Active Directory support built in as well. We've got MDM support, mobile application management. And what I'll do is, as we go through today's session, I'll go through and discuss some of these capabilities so that you get a good understanding of what they are and how they relate to these different editions. So as we take a look at comparing Windows 7 against Windows 8.1 and now obviously with Windows 10, really the big changes you can see here are the ones highlighted over in the far right column. So so we've got the start menu has been brought back in. We've got live tile capabilities. So what we're really getting there are the start menu type capabilities that we did have with Windows 7, but starting to enhance them with some of the live tile capabilities and the customization abilities that we've got with from the Windows 8.1 side. We've got support for Cortana. Microsoft Edge constantly gets new capabilities added into it. Things like the virtual desktop capability built in is also a nice feature. We've got OneDrive started being built in with Windows 8.1, but now it's just part of Windows 10. But then obviously there are a lot of additional capabilities around management. So some of these are the things that I mentioned already. So things like MDM capabilities, but also Windows Store for Business, which is becoming more and more important. Some of the dynamic provisioning pieces, which we'll talk about later on, as well as Azure AD join. But it's important to remember that things like the domain join, the group policy, those types of capabilities, they've been in there for a long time and they'll continue to be included in here. So so you don't have to worry about those going away. So Windows 10 Pro, it means business. So that's what the Pro means. So really the big push here is making sure that people understand that if they're buying a device for business purposes, that they should really be looking at a device that comes pre-installed with Windows 10 Pro, as opposed to buying one with Home and then discovering that they really can't take advantage of some of the new capabilities. So let's take a look at some of these capabilities. So first up, around the security pieces. So things like Windows Information Protection, BitLocker to Go. Some of those things are, those things especially are very heavily focused on Win 10 Pro. But obviously things like Windows Hello do work across the consumer side as well. Now, for the best-in-class management, this is where you start seeing again that you get the best experience with Pro versus Home, and then when it comes to the productivity tools, really the important one here, I guess, is that Windows 10 Pro does include the remote desktop service so that it can be remotely connected into, as opposed to just being used as a remote desktop client, which Windows 10 Home can do. So let's drill into some of these in more detail now, starting with the security message, then we'll move into the management side, and then we'll talk about some of the productivity enhancements with Windows 10. So part of this conversation is a Windows 10 Pro versus Home conversation, but as we keep going through, you'll see that it's also a Windows 10 versus Windows 8.1 versus Windows 7 conversation as well. So let's keep going now and jump straight into the comprehensive security story. So one of the important things that Microsoft is doing now is including things like Windows Defender capabilities directly in the operating system. You've got the trusted boot capabilities, ongoing enhancements to the Windows firewall, so making sure that devices can be locked down very easily. For people worried about people gaining access to something that's on a device that's been lost or misplaced, then using technologies like BitLocker or BitLocker to go on removable media mean that unless people have got that recovery key or know the password, they can't actually get in and get that data. Now, we've also got the ability to start leveraging the biometric capabilities through Windows Hello and Windows Hello for Business, and then also being able to go through and starting to really separate out the personal information from corporate information using Windows Information Protection. When it comes to the management story, let's take a look at the three primary columns that we've got here. So things like single sign-on and more control over your devices. So now we've really got two different ways we can look at doing this. We've got the first two, Azure AD Join and MDM client. So using Azure Active Directory as our identity provider, and then using something like Intune as our mobile device management solution. But we can still go down the path of doing a traditional domain join and then leveraging group policy for those management purposes. So it's not that you have to choose one versus the other. It's not that Microsoft is saying you must use one of these. It's a matter of now you've got a choice as to which one actually makes more sense for your organization. So moving on then, we've got options now, a bit more flexibility around deferring upgrades. We've got Windows Update for Business capabilities as well. And then also, once we start taking a look at some of the other capabilities here, we've got access to the Windows Store for Business, assigned access capabilities. Now, when we take a look at assigned access, it's really all about setting up a device so that a single user can use it for a particular purpose, or basically using it as a kiosk. So it means that the users can only interact with one Windows Store app and they can't change any of the system settings. Now, another important one, especially for those who've got older applications that they need to keep running under an older version of Windows, for example, the ability to enable client Hyper-V on your Windows 10 Pro devices. So this is an important feature because it means that you've got the ability to run a variety of operating systems underneath the one operating system to make sure that you do have the best compatibility moving forward. Now, taking a look at some of the productivity options that we've got things like remote desktop, which we've mentioned. We've got enhancements to OneDrive for Business, but also with the productivity tools. So things like the different virtual desktops, getting live content updates from live tiles, Snap Assist capabilities. So taking the Windows Snap capability where we could have side-by-side apps quite easily, and really starting to take advantage of some of the higher resolution displays that are out there. So being able to easily snap into a window into a corner, for example, so that we could have 4 windows on a high resolution display, for example. Now, other things as well, making sure that it's easy for people to use a variety of input devices. So voice, pen, touch, gesture, if they want to use inking capabilities, if they want to start getting into some of the new capabilities of the Creators Edition with Paint 3D, but also Microsoft Edge, making it easy for you to scribble notes on the web pages that you're browsing. And then also you've got capabilities like Cortana at Work. So it's the digital assistant designed to help you get things done. So basically it can help to provide answers and complete some basic tasks. And over time it learns more about how you work so that it can become more useful over time. So setting things like reminders, working across multiple devices, etc. That's the kind of thing that Cortana can do very easily for you. So why go Pro? So here we take a look at what's in Windows Pro that's not in the Home Edition. So first up, the enterprise grade security. So we've got BitLocker and BitLocker to go. We've got Windows Hello with Azure AD integration. And we've also got Windows Information Protection. As we move across to the management tools, this is where we take a look at the Azure AD join versus domain join and group policy. We've got more control over the updates. So rather than being pushed down updates at Microsoft's schedule, you've got a lot more control over when these get pushed out. Now, another thing that's important to note is that over the last few weeks, Microsoft has made announcements around now that they are going to be on a fixed release schedule of 2 updates to Windows per year, with each one of those updates having an 18-month window of support. So that means that now it gets easier to start planning. So instead of, well, when's the next Microsoft update going to be available? Well, they're basically going to be sticking to a March and September update timeframe to make it easy for you to do your planning around updates and rollouts, for example. And then finally, enhanced productivity. So things like the remote desktop capabilities. Now, why would you consider moving from Windows 7 to Windows 10? Now, some of the new reasons here, well, first of all, it just may be a new machine that Windows 10 is going to run better on. But being able to take advantage of Windows Hello, you've got the secure boot capabilities, you've got Windows information protection to protect work documents, you've got the cloud-ready management. So being able to integrate with the different cloud services that your customers may already be using, such as Office 365 or Enterprise Mobility Suite. And then also, productivity tools for the modern workplace. So, better tablet capabilities than Windows 7, enhanced Paint capabilities, Cortana, and Windows Ink, as we've discussed. So moving on to the comprehensive security story, let's talk about some of these things in a little bit more detail. So first up, with Windows Defender, knowing that you've got something built in straight out of the box that protects you from viruses, spyware, and other malicious software. You've got Windows Firewall, making sure that the appropriate ports are blocked as you configure them, and then also you've got Trusted Boot, so making sure that when you do have the right hardware that's got UEFI versus traditional BIOS, that it basically means that the PC can start up in a trusted state and the OS knows that it's running healthily. Now, when it comes to BitLocker and BitLocker to go, you don't have to worry about encrypted devices making their way out into the general public and that information being leaked. So even if someone does lose a laptop or someone loses an external drive, if they're protected with BitLocker or BitLocker to go, you don't have to worry about going through and that information being exposed. Now, another thing that's important here is that if you really want the best BitLocker experience, you want to have a TPM 1.2 or greater included in the device. So in some cases, this is really going to push you quite heavily towards a business or a pro machine anyway. So with Windows Hello, you've got the ability to go through it and use things like fingerprint capabilities. You've got the facial recognition, which you've seen before, but we've also got the ability to go through and do companion device unlock with certain types of companion devices. So these are things where there are more and more devices becoming available, so it's important to keep an eye on what these are and when they will be made available. Now, we've mentioned Windows Information Protection several times already, but let's just talk about it quickly. And this is where we can go through and start controlling how employees use business data. So we can block them from copying internal information into external apps or into non-trusted apps, for example. So it means we can help protect data wherever it lives. We can start setting guidelines and boundaries around our network versus our online locations that are trusted sources, for example, without it having to be just a brute force blocking people from doing anything. Let's take a look at a few more of the best-in-class management capabilities. So first up, we've got Azure AD join. So being able to do single sign-in straight out of the box with a Windows 10 device. So if you've got a pro device, one of the first questions it asks you is, are you setting it up for personal use or for the organization? And then you can join it directly to Azure AD. And that means that you don't have to be on the corporate network. It means that you can get connected to the cloud services and start having policies pushed down to that device already. But it's important to note, though, and it's something that I mentioned earlier, but it's worth stressing again, is that this doesn't mean that you have to stop using domain join and group policy. For organizations that have got a heavy investment in their on-prem infrastructure and have got complex group policy requirements, a lot of the MDM solutions really just aren't going to be able to match some of those things for a little while yet. But one of the things that I do strongly recommend is that you take a look at some of the enhanced MDM capabilities that are included with Windows 10 Creators Update, because you'll find that a lot of work is being done to make sure that some of the more used group policy settings can now be easily implemented from your your MDM solutions as well. And finally, obviously, the MDM client is required for all of that to work, and that's just built into Windows 10. Now, getting more control over updates is obviously incredibly important. You don't want a machine prompting you to restart 2 seconds before you're about to start a presentation, for example, or when you're about to kick off some other important work. So you've got the ability to go through now, and you've got more control over deferring updates, and you've also got Windows Update for Business, which means that you get much more control over the system and the app updates. So really being able to streamline that process rather than it being more of a when Microsoft decides, it becomes more of a when you decide. Now, other ways that you can go through and deploy and configure business apps now include Windows Store for Business. So, you've seen the consumer store, but now we can start providing a business store as well that sits inside of the Windows Store on Windows devices. We've got assigned access. So, as I mentioned, this allows you to set it up for a single use or a kiosk type situation, as well as client Hyper-V so that you can run multiple operating systems if you do need some of those backwards compatibility capabilities. Now, moving on to productivity. So, understanding that you've got remote desktops. So you may be away from the office, but you've got a desktop machine at work. You can remotely connect into that and basically work anytime, anywhere. So you access your desktop with all your files, your folders, and your apps the way that you want them. So all you need is Windows 10 Pro on that device, but also you need to make sure that the appropriate firewall settings, etc., are in place, or proxying solutions to allow that connection back into the corporate network if needed. Now, some of the enhancements to productivity here include things like the Start menu and the Live Tile enhancements. We've got the Virtual Desktop and Snap Assist capabilities, so hopefully you're already taking advantage of a lot of these. But also the tablet mode, so being able to switch in and out of tablet mode quite easily. So if you've got a convertible device, if you've got a 2-in-1 device, something with a detachable keyboard, being able to switch modes quite easily definitely makes this whole process a much richer user experience. And now, when it comes to inputs and how do you turn thoughts into actions, this is where all the different ways that Windows allows you to interact. So voice, through pen, through touch, through different gestures. You've got Windows Ink, you've got Paint 3D included, you've got the Edge browser, which, as we've mentioned, has already had several major updates during its life cycle and continues to get more features rolled into it. And not forgetting, obviously, that you've got Cortana, so making sure that you've got something that works alongside the way that you do. So you setting reminders, setting calendar items, etc. It can do all of these things quite easily. So now let's just go through and summarize some of these things that we just spoke about. So let's start off with why upgrade from Windows 7 Pro to Windows 10. So one of these is around being built for the modern security threats. So hello, secure boot, Windows information protection. With the cloud-ready management side, we've got Azure AD Join, the MDM client, Windows Update for Business, Windows Store for Business, and then tools for the modern workplace, Windows Ink, tablet mode, OneDrive syncing, and Cortana. Now, let's take another look at why would you go Pro versus Home. So the security capabilities, additional management tools over what Home provides, as well as enhanced productivity capabilities. So these are just sort of summarizing some of the things that we've already seen. So now, why choose Windows over the competition? So if someone says, well, I want to buy a tablet that doesn't run Windows, or I want to do this, I want to do that. Well, again, it's a lot of those same capabilities. So the world-class security, more business apps work here, as well as the better management and better control overall. Now, something to add to this conversation, especially for those of you who are already going down the Office 365 business path, for example, and are wondering, what other things can you start leveraging? Well, Windows 10 has got a lot of capabilities directly built in that will allow you to easily integrate with a lot of Microsoft's online services already. So things like your OneDrive for Business integration is very, very strong. You've got Office 365, so if you're doing once you start doing things like Azure AD Join, it's very easy for you to start getting single sign-on into all of your different Microsoft Online services. And this makes it a much better process for the user, just one username, one password that they remember to access basically everything that's work-related. So let's just go through now and do a quick summary, but before I do that, take a look at the resources. what I'll do next month is start drilling into some of these in more detail, because we'll start introducing E3 and E5, and that's where we can start having more of a conversation around, well, what are the additional cloud service capabilities. But this one's really just a bit of a quick overview to give you an idea of what's new, what's improved, some of the changes versus 7 versus 8.1, and then next month we'll go into much more detail on a lot of these technologies. So in the meantime though, for more information, take a look at the Australian OEM team blog site, where we'll be focusing more and more of this Windows 10 Pro type content moving forward, rather than it just being heavily focused on Windows Server. We've also got the OEM pre-sales alias OEM Server AU. So that you can email if you do have pre-sales questions on Microsoft's OEM server products or licensing. And then finally, smarthq.com.au, which is really the OEM team's landing page for you to get information and assets to help you, drive different campaigns and activities that are going on. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining today's recording, and look forward to you joining us next month.